Hi, welcome back to the channel where we talk about all things to do with team coaching.
Hi Ro, how are you? I see you a bit cold. It's
I
cold
am.
in Perth, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a bit, we're having winter weather in Perth today, so yeah, I'm feeling the cold. But we're going to feel the warmth in our conversation, aren't we? Because we're going to be having a chat about assumptions. Before we get into that, though, as always, please remember to like, subscribe, and comment on the videos. It does tremendous help for the channel and gets the word out there. And obviously, we want to share more pearls of wisdom and conversation and dialogue about all things to do with team coaching.
That's right.
So, we're going to talk about assumptions today, aren't we?
That's right, yeah. And I think you shared earlier a lovely anecdotal story about it. Would you like to start with that?
I would, and I'd like to say that this is shared from a sort of a stance of curiosity and learning from my perspective. So I was telling Nadia about a workshop I did where I was talking about teams and we were getting it was a 1 day workshop and we were getting towards the end of the workshop and suddenly one of the participants literally sat bolt upright in the seat and just blurted out, "So, this is about how I communicate with my team, isn't it?" And before I could say anything, one of the other participants chipped in and said, "Of course it is." And I was like, wow, that's really interesting because we've been talking about dialogue and some of the technical bits around dialogue as well and what it means to have dialogue. And I was just really intrigued that they'd had that sort of realization. And I was kind of working on the assumption that, of course, everybody understands that it's about having dialogue and communication with your team members. But I think it's that they got so wound up in they were doing tasks. You know, my team is there to do tasks that they forgot that, oh, actually, I can just have some great conversations with people and have a dialogue. So, yeah, obviously that was the chat we were having beforehand. So, what was it about that in particular, Nadia, that you thought, oh, yeah, let's have a chat about that today?
Well, first of all, because, going back, a few years when I was, working in teams and in the industry, I could have that same light bulb moment. Sometimes we work in teams, sometimes we work in groups of people together where each and everyone has their task. And maybe the need for communication is not that obvious because there's not that great interdependence. So I actually felt a lot of compassion for that because I'm a quite task oriented, execution, get the result, get the outcome, achieve the goal. So through this work, I think that's the greatest insight that I've gotten that, this communication is just really, really, really key. And I think communication is on every leadership development program. It's all about communication, but even just naming it communication, what does that actually mean? Because everybody can talk. Is that communication? Everybody can say something or have an opinion or questions. But what really do we mean by communication? And in this instance, what is your, because we talked about it earlier and it was about, like how team coaching, just at the very basic, it is around corralling the team to get on the same page from which then they can use that as a springboard to actually go and achieve all those tasks. And depending on the interdependence within the team, that communication is key because they can only realize those tasks through the relationship that they have with each other. And in order to establish that, you need communication.
Yeah, yeah. So for me, it was interesting because we had obviously we've been talking about dialogue, we've been talking about connection. So it's not just about words, it's about connection. And for me, as the facilitator trainer, it just reinforced that model or whatever it is that's going through your head that says, it's we need to understand the assumptions that are in the room and getting those assumptions out on the table is really part of that dialoguing process. So dialogue is a great word because it means through words. that we make meaning, but it's through those words. And, for my background, I studied classics, and the word logos doesn't just mean word, it means collection of ideas, it means the thinking through of something. And so through that, it's almost through shared understanding is the way that I would express dialogue. And that's what it was about, because in that moment, there was shared understanding in the room from the person actually showing that light bulb moment, and also from the person who then said, of course it is. Immediately, you could feel the penny drop in the room, that it's about that shared understanding, collecting the words together in the room is what it's all about, and that's how we make connection with others. So it was just brilliant, because it was so simple, yet in that one moment we had such a shared understanding of what we'd been talking about. So it was kind of like a parallel process of the learning material shared in the room through that kind of two-sentence conversation.
I love that. I love that. Beautifully said. And yeah, I can feel that penny dropping, that mutually sort of, it's almost like some cogs sort of clicking in, and from that, the engine of the teamwork can start, right? And so you mentioned dialogue, and I'm very intrigued about that concept, because what is the alternative? What do we find ourselves doing in teams? So we do communicate. It's maybe more directive or it's task oriented. Um, what are we doing instead of creating a shared understanding, a shared meaning? What typically happens
So
from your
to get
perspective?
the opposite, which is monologue.
Yeah.
Yeah, so where the leader tells, directs through speaking to others rather than through words and through conversation. Um, so I think the communication stance of leaders, that default to monologue as opposed
Mm.
to dialogue. And obviously in dialogue, we also get that concept of co-creation as well, which, as you know, is really important to me and to you. Otherwise, we're co-creating all the time. We wouldn't be working together if it weren't important. So that's what it is for me. It's about really getting into the nitty-gritty of different communication styles and different ways of communicating. Because I talked then not just about the words that he said, but how he said it, that he literally sat bolt upright, and he wasn't talking to anybody in particular in the room. It was like a thought that he had that was then just getting expressed in the room. So you could see and hear the thinking happening in real time. So yeah, it was that's the difference for me, is monologue versus dialogue, and dialogue is about co-creation.
Yeah, and there's a very clear distinction in terms of intention is what coming up for me, because if the intention is to get the result, to get it done, to deliver it in a more sort of top-down style, then monologue might be the most appropriate way to go, for instance, in an emergency
Yeah,
or in, whatever the moment sort of asks. However, what we're trying to achieve in teams is getting that diversity, out in the room, right? That's the whole point. There's so much talk about, we need diverse team, we need diversity, we need different perspectives, we need to collaborate, all those sort of things. They just don't happen by itself
mm,
because we're sort of trained to in this monologue way of being. We feel a lot of pressure on ourselves, especially as a team lead. You feel a lot of pressure on yourself in order to lead your team, or what does that even mean? So this steps into not only intention, but also in underlying models and views and perceptions of what team leadership is, and also what team delivery is.
yeah, yeah. I think that's a great realization, and maybe in future talks we can cover this topic of team leader. What does that actually mean? Because I think
Very
that's a whole
interesting.
big topic that we could unpick. So obviously today we wanted to keep this as crisp and short as possible, whilst honouring the intent of dialogue. Is there anything that you think we should leave the listeners with as a sort of a parting gift? about this concept of dialogue?
I do. Yes, I feel it's just such a very subtle insight. And I feel it's so subtle, so simple. And wouldn't it be a great addition that once a team comes together in one of those team meetings, we have these recurring team meetings every week we meet. And I know a lot of people sort of in those rooms or in those teams catch up. They walk away feeling well, this was another, waste of my hour, or what have we actually decided? What are we actually doing? Am I actually clear in terms of what I'm walking away with from this meeting?
Mm.
So the invitation really is your next team meeting started with, are we all on the same page here? Is there something that we need to clarify? Is there some meaning? And this could be a just a simple conversation around what is our purpose? Is it clear to everyone what our purpose is? And then from that, have a conversation around is it clear how we're going to be working together to achieve that purpose? That could be a great, simple conversation starter. Doesn't need to take more than 10 minutes at the start of your team meeting and just see what happens.
Yeah,
I love to inspire people to do these simple interventions because everyone can do that. And it's
yeah,
it's just in the simplicity of communicating with intention and communicating with the aim to getting some clarity around how we are as a team together, how we work together best as a team, and to what deliverable and what goal.
yeah. Nice. I like that. Intention and clarity. I think they're the
Intentional
two
clarity. There you go.
key words coming out of the conversation today. As always, it's great having our conversations. We never know where they're going to go, and that's probably true of team coaching as well. So thanks for listening in to our chats about team coaching, and drop us a comment in the comments below if there's anything that you are grappling with at the moment that you think, oh, wonder if we can have a conversation about it. We'd love to hear from you. And thanks. And remember, it's about being human, not doing human. See you next time.
See you soon. Bye.